Hi, Chris. How are you doing? Okay, it's okay. I'm okay. Hi, Ray. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing okay. How about you?
Yeah, I'm doing
How's your dog?
good. I spoke with the vet this for the service place this morning, and they are gonna come on Sunday.
Mm.
Yeah, so but he's okay. He's limping around, you know.
Have you been playing with him more recently?
Yeah, yeah. So I just started giving him whatever he wants to eat. So
You big
yeah.
old steak. Play with the
Yeah, I
bone.
think, yeah. So Sunday we're gonna do bacon and then
No.
yeah. So, but yeah, it's okay. How are you doing?
Oh, okay. I was playing with the charts and like you said, I had a little trouble with the different IDEs accepting GraphViz, and I just gave up and went to Tawny like you did, and it seems to work. And right now I'm playing with trying to change the nodes into something different.
Okay,
And
cool.
because like the other one, I loved the way we were able to play with the make it
Different.
triangles
Mm,
or different polygons. Yeah, that was kind of fun. So
yeah.
I'm gonna mess with that one and make it look different.
Yeah, per Michelle's request, we're gonna do circle and neato today
Oh, okay.
for our lab. So hi Seth, I'm glad you can join us. Hi Yassine, everything's good. So we'll wait a couple minutes for other people to pop in. Oh, there's Michelle. Hi Michelle. So we're gonna do some GraphViz with neato and circo today. Um, I wrote the instructions, I tested it, so hopefully you guys don't have any problem. um, and then we are going to work on just touching on nTop a little bit. So thank you, Chris. Yep, every day is a different day. So
All you can do is spend as much time and happy time as you can with them.
yeah, it's sad because we still have to walk his sister
Hmm.
and he wants to still go. So,
Mm.
but he can't. So yeah, so one of us have to stay with him.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, he's good. He's such a good dog. Well, that's like what they're 9. So if they're 10 or 11, that's like 99 years human life or something like that, right?
I think it was 7 years for every human
Oh,
year, or
7.
no,
Yeah.
wait, 7 dog years for every
So
yeah, something
he's
like
in
that.
his 70s or something. So yeah, I mean, when I get to 70, if I make it, I'm probably not in a good shape either.
Hmm. None of
Because
us
I'm
will be.
not, yeah, I'm not that fit. I have friends that are very fit. Um, and so I know people that like still do triathlon in their 70s. So that's crazy. All right, so it's 2 o'clock. Let's talk lab. Today we are gonna work on GraphViz a little bit. we're gonna work with neato. You saw the dot when we did the assignment. So Michelle asked if I can illustrate the circle in the neato. So what I did was I wrote the instruction for that, and then we're gonna play with nTop a little bit, and I'll talk about Python with nTop. I was trying to work around some stuff, but they fully integrated Lua with nTop. I was just looking around trying to find, because the one that's illustrated in the book was the older version, and now they implemented like a different web interface. So we'll touch on that. Okay. So I'm gonna go into screen share, and then we'll talk about our lab. So you will find this on lab 8 page, and I tried to put together as much details as possible, in case you're going to come back to it and look at it again or finish it up. So I wrote the instruction using Windows environment, but if you're using Linux or Mac OS, just keep in mind that you have to take a look at GraphViz tutorial or guides. So that way it's a little different. Windows, you have to set up an environment path. And so I had put together a screenshot for you there. So the important thing that you need to know is, first, we have to install GraphViz. And if you're using an IDE, make sure that you bring in the packages. But I mainly use Notepad to write my GraphViz dot file. So, so if you use an editor, that will be fine. Or if you use Linux, you can open Vim and then use that, or Nano if you're using Mac OS. And so you can write directly into your terminal, and then that way, you can save it and run it. But any editor will do. So for GraphViz, we are going to use neato and circo. And these are the two additional technology that would be used. Hold on one second. Okay, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. I had to take that call. It's regarding my dog. So, okay. So for GraphViz, we are going to use neato. And so we talked about the installation for GraphViz in the last session. But if you didn't install, you can refer to our notes and also the last video for our class session. Now, on the IDE, if you use Tawny, okay, just keep in mind that when you do that, you would need to go to tools, and then you would have to manage package. And this is where you need to install the GraphViz, which you see that I have that here. Okay. So once you have installed, then that package will be ready for your IDE. But anyway, so the first part of our lab is it talks about how we need to set up environment variables. And keep in mind that if you already have, so you go to control panel, this is Windows now. go to System Security and then System. And I touched on this last time where you go to Advanced System Settings and you would then click on Environment Variables. Then on the top, you want to check your user path. So you can click Edit, make sure that GraphViz is there. Then after that, you are going to click New, and then this is where you would put in the path. And if you look for the path on Windows, you can go to this PC, C drive, and under Program Files, GraphViz should be under Program Files under C drive. So you then would open up the bin folder, and the dot executable is here. It automatically launch. But if you can find circle and which is here, okay. So you would then have to put in the path as what's shown. So neato and circle you need to add. Let me see what's up with the chat. So how do you know whether you add the variable as system versus under environment variables? So in the control panel, environment variables, if you look at it again, right, there are two areas. So in the top is going to be the user. And in the user, if you click path and you click edit, you can find that needs to be there. Okay. And then if it's not there, then you have to add it. So you would have new and then you type in the path or paste the path in. And it only needs to be bin. For the system variable, and this is important, you need to have, you know, circle, dot, and neato. We did dot last time. So you would then have, we would click new under the system variable and then add it. Now, if you want to check, it would be on this list, like what you see on mine, or you can go in and click edit, right, and change up whatever that you type if you added it wrong. Now, in the path, you can set a new path, or you can just click new and it would add it there. So when I did that, it actually ran it for me. So you simply add circle.exe under next to bin and then neato. Okay, so make sure that you have those for Windows. Now, other OSs, you don't really have to do that, right? And when you do the installation with Mac OS, if you follow the instruction, it's pretty straightforward. You can do it with terminal, and then, or you can download the PKG file and then use the instruction and follow that. Now for Linux, you can do sudo, right? Depending on the release, you can do yum for Fedora, or for Debian, like if you use Raspberry Pi or Kali, you would then follow the instruction for the Debian. Okay, any other questions? All right, so we found the location, so we want to make sure that we put in circle.exe or and neato.exe. So with that said, what we want to do is we can open an editor and we are going to use GraphViz directly with our code. So let's look over the question first. It tells you that you need to use GraphViz to create a graph using dot, neato, circle, no connection with the following criteria. Okay, that's fine, Cynthia. No problem. Then for the notes, we want it to be hexagon, and you can use any color of your choice. You can fill it, or you can color just the hexagon outer edges, and then you can you got to make sure that they're interconnected. So in this one, it's a non-directed graph, and we are going to use the dashes, okay? And you can output any type of file that you wish. So if you wanted to do PNG, right? And here I put down the example command for you for the PDF. So if you're using circle, you would replace neato with circle, and you would do -t, right? And then the type of file, so PDF, and then the dot file that you save, which has all of this and the attributes. And then we want to do a -o for output with the option switch, and then the type of file that we want. So let me go to my, it's best, like what we talked about, to put a folder and then keep everything in that folder so that way it's easy. Okay. So for the L1, let me open it so you can see. In the L1, I have, so if you're using a regular graph, non-directed graph, you simply tell it graph, okay? Just like what we practiced last time. And then we would name it whatever we want. So I have graph, my graph, and I want the node to be X hexagon, and I want it color red. So you can use any color of your choice. Remember, the attributes need to be in the square bracket. And then we would finish that out with the semicolon because this is C-based. And then we would put in the node criteria. So A is connected to B, and B is connected to C, and C is connected to D, and D is connected to E, and E connects back to A. And then we have B to D to A to E to B, and then E to B to C to D to A. And we would finish that out with the curly brace. Okay. Any questions so far? Then next, you're going to have to go File, Save As. And we wanted to call this dot, okay? And change this to all file, otherwise it makes it into a text file. So we wanted to save it as a dot, okay? So once you save it as a dot, then what you can do is you're going to open up your command prompt, change your directory to the location of your folder. Then what we're going to do is we are going to put in the command. So you want to go neato, right, -t. And if you wanted to generate PNG, you would replace the PDF with PNG. And then we would do the file that you save. So if you save it as a certain name, then you would do that file name, dot, output, and then how you wanted to output the other file. So I'm going to go ahead and do circle. Okay. And then I have L1 dot -o, and that will be L1 dot PDF. And if there's no error generated, that means it created it. Okay. So then you can go and check. So here's my PDF that I just wrote. And it should look something like that. Okay. So again, we have the graph, it's a non-directed graph. And the node, right? We have the shape, the color. So this is going to be the attribute. And you can be more fancy with it. I just, make it simple so you can see. And then we put in the node connection criteria and close it out with the curly brace. Now, when you look at this diagram, this will be like a round robin type of environment where this was used back in the day for like ATM switches. So we sometime would have redundancy or one way to send. So in the round robin, it's going to use the inner to send and the outer to receive, or the inner to receive and the outer to send. And then you would have the only thing that we can add is we can add the C to the E, the C to the A, right? So if you want it to be fully connected across to make sure that all the nodes are all interconnected, right? We can change this and we can add A to C and then C to E, and that will make it interconnected. So we can simply draw it with the two additional lines across here by adding in these. Okay, so I'm just showing you. Then after you save it, then we wanted to, for PDF and those type of file, make sure you close it before you regenerate it. So if we rerun this, right, and then we check back in our file, now it has these. Okay. So what I did was I modified it up a little bit and making sure. So if we want to add another line, we can just go from A to C or C to A again, and then C to E again, and so on. Any question? So for the assignment, I need for you to screenshot your dot file and the image output. Okay. Now let's say if I wanted to change this to neato, I just up arrow and then move it over here and then change this to neato. Okay. And let's say I wanted to make this PNG so I can see the difference. Okay. And then now I can go in to the folder where I saved it. Right, here's the PNG. So as you can see, when you do neato, it's a little different than circle. Circle is a little bit more wider spread, right? And so, still you would still have the connectivity like what you intend for it to be. But as you can see, the lines are shorter. It's going to zoom in a little bit more on the circle compared to this. Okay. So what I want you to do is after you test it with dot, neato, and circle, you would take the screenshot, of course, and then you would describe the image output of dot, neato, and circle. How are they different? Let's just say how. Sorry. Okay. Any question? So let's look at the dot. I think I made it. Here's the dot one. Okay. So if you run it as dot, you can see that it graphs it a little different than when you look at it from neato, or circo. Now, in the case if you're using dot for a diagram that has a lot more nodes, right, you can see that it sometimes kind of it's overlaying some of the lines. So when you have a lot of nodes, then it's going to become kind of crazy, right? So what you can consider is to use attributes to make it, more visible. Like we can make the line a certain color so we can indicate a certain route or a certain path in our network. Um, we can, add in a weight for the line so we can make it thicker, etc. Right? But I want to show you how they look a little different so that way you have the option to draw them in case you need to. Now, in an automation process is that we would take the text file that's received, right, like what the book described, and then we would parse it, you know, then we would be able to generate our graph. But if you manually do it, let's say that's your task to be able to create, right, your network layout or your topology, then you can do it manually this way. Okay, any question? And so with that, you can have any color of your choice as long as you do a hexagon, only because I want to make sure that you know how to use attributes. Okay. All right. Any question on exercise 1? We're good? Okay, so the next one, sorry for all the typo, I was tired. The next one, we are going to use GraphViz again, and we are going to use dot, neato, and circle again. And on this one, we are going to use different shapes. So by default, it's going to give you the oval for the nodes, okay? Unless you specify the attribute for your nodes. So we want to make switches, which are the S's, that will be triangular, the PC and the server, that will be box. Okay. You can use different color. So here are the criteria. So you have a switch which connects 4 computers together. Okay. And then that switch is bridged with another switch, switch 2. And on the switch 2, we have 2 server connected. And then both of these switches are then connected to the router. Okay. So normally in a regular network environment, you will need to have a switch that handles the client system. Why don't we want to mix everything in? There's physical security that's involved and logical security that's involved. Okay. Because we want to be able to, these are the centralized systems, so we wanted to keep it on one so we can monitor and manage it better. And then you don't want to mixing with the switch 1 because somebody can walk by, plug in their computer or their laptop, and then, have access. So what we want to do is we should bridge it over, and in that we can actually set up, different configurations and settings to monitor our client system on one segment and our server on a separate segment. But everything is going to be going to the router, and this is going to be an edge router. So again, we are going to use dot, neato, and circle. And then you already saw the command how it's used in the last one. So we want to output the file. provide the screenshot of the image to output for dot, neato, and circle. So I'll go ahead and open up my notepad again. I forgot I closed it. And I'm going to go back to my folder where I save it. So I'm going to look for my dot file. So here's my L2. So in this one, we are going to use a directed graph. So we're going to have to do digraph. And then you can give your network a name like branch 1, headquarter, you know. So in a regular environment, we would actually identify it to that part of the network, right? Sales, whatever. Then we put in the connection criteria. And so for the nodes, I would then do PC1 and then its attribute. You can do this in a group. It works better with Python, right? But in GraphViz, it's better to specify them individually. Okay, so here I just color all the PC light blue. My router I color green. And I use the default shape for the router, which is the oval or round. For the switch, I have the shape as triangle. And then I wanted to differentiate the switch. So I have a pink and a brown. You can choose any color you want, yellow, gray. So it should be able to recognize most of your common color. Then for the server, I have server shape will also be box because it's a computer. And then I have it gray and I filled it. So it looks a little bit different than your regular PC. So once I have my digraph written out, I'm going to go ahead and save as. And again, on this one, you can simply make sure you change it to all file and then you would save it as dot. Okay. Now you can also save it as GraphViz file, which is GV. That will be fine too. It will be native to the application. And that way you can run it. But that will work across. So then when you're finished, you would go to command prompt. Okay. And I'm lazy, so I up arrow and I'm going to change that to L2. And then I change this to L2, right? And then I run it. I have made these. So here what you can see is I have my file ready and this is what it looks like. Okay. Or another version of this will be like this. So when you name your nodes, make sure that you don't include white space, okay, in the naming. Otherwise, it's going to think of it as a separate node. Then I have one for dot only. So in my opinion, I think the dot one looks the closest to what we would see physically, right? And because the other ones, you can see it's kind of spread out a little bit more. So any question? So here is the file dot. So as you save that file, you can use it for circle, neato, or dot. And you don't have to use the color I use or how I filled my server, but all I want is for you to be able to use your attributes. And we wanted to really thematically think about how we color code it. So after you create your diagram, you probably have to have some kind of color coding scheme, index to really tell people what they would look like. So in a network topology, we usually would have some kind of little section notes about the topology. Okay. Now, of course, this tool is not the best in creating network topology. Okay. You can use either commercial or open source tool. There are online tools and so on. And some of the online tools actually use GraphViz library. So when you now visit websites, like draw.io, okay, you can see how you can, and this doesn't have to be about networking, like we said. You can use this to draw flowchart, you can use it to draw diagrams, you can use it, in project management a lot of the times. If you're looking at like IT or development, you would have to create some kind of task flow process, and then to be able to evaluate your resources and how you would balance all of that. We have a certificate coming for that. So, but yeah. But for this class, we drawn the network topology because it applies with what we're learning. So after you finish graphing those, take screen captures and add it to number 2. So I want your dot file and I want your output. Okay. Okay. No other questions? Okay, so I guess I can move on to number 3, or should I wait? It's pretty short today, right? If we, there are only 4 tasks to do. But what I want you to do when you get to number 4 is to look around a little bit more, okay? And then to really look at how to use nTop PNG. I will link, there's a really great tutorial that is watched by a lot of people. The person who did it, he does a really good job in describing all the elements of it. So if you wanted to really dive a little deeper, I think it's really good for you to really see how this tool is a little bit different than your Wireshark or your other type of network monitoring tool. Okay. And it uses your local system to be able to analyze the activity. but you know, you would install this tool, of course, on your controller system, like your servers or your management console. Okay, so when you look at a data center, right, or more of an IT environment, you would have like a computer that's going to be console, and we use it to connect to the rack. And on that system, we would install the tools that we need for analysis, for monitoring, and so on. And we can connect it to different switches and routers and, you know, system for configuration. And then in some cases, they would have a dedicated server just to be able to manage that. And for nTop, it's really great with using it with SQLite. So it's designed to really take the information and put it into a database. And that streamlines so much work for us, because if you gather the information and you dump everything out to text file, what will happen is you have to take that and interpret it, right? So you have to use another tool to do the analysis with it. So if it already has some of the plugin component where you can bring it into a database and manage that database over time, what you can do is you can do a query from it and then look at the trend and the pattern in your network environment or your security landscape. And nTop is often used with security part of it. Okay. All right, so let's work on number 3, and then we'll touch on nTop. So we are going to use the requirement from exercise 2, but in this one, I wanted to render an SVG file for the directed graph, okay? And I put in the link. GraphViz gave you a manual, or they posted a manual that has some details about Python. So if you click on this, it will take you here and it walks you through on how to install. We've seen this last time. And then it even show you how you can do an import, right? And then some example, how to create nodes. So when you use the node method, that generates the node, and you can make it, and as long as you put it in the quotation mark, okay, it's gonna know that it is a label for that node. Now we don't have to use node, we can actually generate the node directly from edges, okay? So in the case where, you know, if you wanted to set up where it just two things that can connect, right? You can also use edges method, and whatever the parameter that you put in that, that's going to allow you to create nodes or to connect existing nodes. Okay. And now we already know how to do print dot source, but in this one we are going to render. Okay. So in their example, this is the output. And you can also use format, and format allows you to set it up in a certain type of output format like PNG or SVG. Okay. But importantly, we need to import, right? We can import the entire GraphViz, or we can specify, like if we're using graph, we would import graph. But number 2 require digraph, so we have to import digraph from GraphViz. Okay, or you can import the entire thing. So it would look something like this. And notice that when they use the edge here, the edge method here, all they need to do is specify what the label of those nodes are, and it automatically draws it. Okay, or you can also use the nodes. So this would be something close to your example. And then you can also set attributes. So here you can specify like how, you know, it should look like. You can even draw the arrow a certain way. You can make it a certain shape, okay? So later on, if you look at this example, see how they use the shape R arrow, right? That makes these fat arrow right here. And then they can also use a shape like egg or star. So you can, you know, so in the grand scheme of things, right? We don't always graph for network systems, right? Network topology. So you might do stuff like this, okay? And note, and just I want to point out something that's important when you use these attributes. It uses graph, okay? So I was playing with this yesterday and I was trying to, so you can play with it and see if it's able to generate, and what you can do is you can give it one, you know, like the sequence or the hierarchy level. So that's what they're doing. Okay. And then we can, so you can take a look at that and play with that. So now I'm going to go ahead and open Tani. And what I'm going to do is, let me see, I think I put it in Graph. Okay, so I saved this file as l3.py. I just import GraphViz and I declare my object as DG for directed graph. And I construct this object, right, for digraph. Then I now access the object and I use edge method. So I simply generate PC1 to switch 1, PC2 to switch 1, PC3 to switch 1, PC4 to switch 1, switch 1 to switch 2, server 1 to switch 2, server 2 to switch 2, switch 1 to router 1, switch 2 to router 1. Now, when you use the render method, you would do render. We would want to have test output, and that will be a GraphViz. And I wanted to view it. So this is a toggle, right? It tells the system that I wanted to see it. Okay. So when I run this, it's gonna put it over here and it's gonna look like this. And remember that I didn't modify any attributes. So it uses all the default shapes, which is oval, right? And the regular arrow. So I'll leave it there for a second so you can take a look at that. Yeah, buddy. Any question? Just Just want to make sure my dog doesn't fall down. He's moping around, looking for something. Okay, so when you run this, and again, remember I had installed GraphViz on this, on Tawny. Any question with exercise 3? So you can add more to this. Again, I did not, so I just wanted to show you that it would look like this. Right, so when you run it, it would generate that. Now, if you use render and you don't put the parameter in, it's gonna give you an error message. It's gonna tell you that you need to specify, right? Because we want to render to a file. Come on. Sorry. Just looking at birds or something. Okay, any question?
So is there a way to pick the output file, like because I guess it automatically goes into, saves it as a PDF.
Right. So then you would have to format. Remember earlier, if you look at the guide, it tells you that you can specify the format. And then that's why I chose to do import GraphViz instead of doing just a specific method from that or the subclass from that library. So coming back to this right here, and when you use format, I was playing with that last week, and I felt like, so see how this is like this right here. So you would then have to specify your format. You can do it this way.
Okay, so
But
I
yeah,
thought that was going to be different from how you write it in the code. So, and also I was kind of a little confused when you, on the output, when you said l3.gv, and then it put the PDF at the end.
yeah. So it default when you do a GraphViz, it's gonna default to the PDF if you don't specify it, right? I didn't. I'm sorry. I didn't specify anything there. I just tell it that it needs to use. It's gonna create it as a GraphViz file, and here you can see that here's my Python file, right? And then it's gonna, when it tests the output, it actually puts it into this folder called test output. And this is where the file exists. Okay. Now for the, if you render, you can render it this way. And if you look at their format, you can still have it put into the test output folder. And then whatever the file is, you just change that file extension. So you can do SVG, but you know.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So if you do test output, like I said, everyone, you are gonna have to check that folder, okay? I think I did this for the exercise 6 before, right? It got like, there was something funky in my code, so I changed it up, but this is the L3 that we wrote. So when it runs it, it automatically takes that and then it converts it to the PDF if you don't specify the file extension there. Okay, any other questions regarding exercise 3? And so I just need screenshot of output and your Python script for number 3. For question 4 asks you, or exercise 4 asks you to use nTop. And if you visit the site, so this is the download page, okay? And you can use it with Raspberry Pi, you can use it with Linux, you can use it with Windows, you can use it with Mac OS, and so on. You can use it with Docker, okay, for cloud environment. So here are your options. So pick your poison, right? So I picked Windows. And once you download, it would download a zip file. Okay. And then you have to decompress it. Keep in mind that you need to have npcap. Okay. So when you install GSN3, it puts in the npcap 4.3 point whatever. Okay. That one is an older version of npcap. And for if you use tools like Wireshark, you know, any monitoring tool or like nTop, you need to have npcap. Okay. So I had added that you need to have the npcap driver, and you can find the link there. So if you download it, so Windows uses WinCap, okay? And because if you don't install this, you're not gonna see anything, okay? It won't be able to activate your network interface card or your wireless adapter to, you know, look at packets. And when you do the installation, it also allows you to have the loopback packet capture. That will be for your loopback address 127.0.0.1. And this tool is, you know, it started with the Nmap, and Nmap is used for probing and scanning. So we can download this and install. Okay, so for Windows 7 and server, you would download the installer. Okay, so if I click this right here, for Windows 10, then I'm going to click download. Okay, and it's a small program, so once you have that, I have it here. then you just run the installer, and then you just follow through. So let me show you. See how mine is already installed? It's gonna say that you want with different options. So I'm just gonna, so you click agree. And if you're working with the older NCAP, you can change this if you want it for administrative use only, which in a network environment, that's common. You can select that option and then click install. Okay. So that takes like a few minutes. Then after you download the nTop and PNG, you wanted to extract it. Okay. Or if you have 7-zip like I have, I just choose an extract file. So once you extract it, the folder would have the installation setup application. Okay. So when you run the setup, you just accept the agreement. Actually, I'm wrong. Sorry. Because it's going to want the script there. So you need to unzip the folder and then you need to install. So yeah, I was right. Confusing, sorry. Click this, then accept, then go next, then leave it blank. Okay, when it asks for command line, just leave it blank. And then you can specify the command line option and then go next. And notice that this is where it's going to put your files to. Go next, and so on. So you just keep clicking next. So what it's going to do is it's going to put the shortcut, and you can put the shortcut on, you know, your desktop if you want. Okay, so I can put it on my desktop. Let me see. Oh, it wants under the program. Okay, so we can put it under program, and then program files, and then click install. Okay. Now, so what happens is when you install NCAP and nTop, sometimes it will require you, it also require you to install Redis when you install nTop and PNG. Okay. So you have to install Redis, otherwise it will not work. And with the NCAP driver, it might require you to restart. So keep in mind that it doesn't take effect until you reboot your system. Now to run nTop PNG, after you finish all the installation, you simply take this link, open up your browser, paste that in. So the first time that you log in, it's going to be admin. It should say default admin and default password is admin. Then once you put in that password, it's going to prompt you to create a new password. And that's going to it's going to take your system and it's going to use it as a server. It's a local host that's going to be server. And the way it works is it's a web interface, so it treats it like a web server. And you are going to log in. So I'm going to go ahead, and I had changed my password already. So I'm going to log in. Oh, come on. not logging me in. Let me see. Wait a set. 1 second. I was just on it earlier today. I think maybe when I reinstall it once. Let me see where it saves the password. CLI. Oh, now it makes me wait. Sorry. But anyway, so let's go back to here. So after you reset your password, you would see on the top, you would have the interface. And I wanted to illustrate that for you, but I can't log in right now for some reason. So on the best thing that you can start with is to use the dashboard, and dashboard only appears when there's an active network interface. Okay. So if you select an active interface, which could be your loopback capture or your network interface card that you use for connection, then you should be able to see the activity on the dashboard. It would graph out everything for you. Then it also gives you the option with like the little computers at the top, and it tells you, you know, your hosts. Your green one is going to be the local host, and then any of the other hosts that could be your client systems or systems that are connected on that network. It would show the IP address, and on my network, I use version 6 and should most likely be like yours. So you would see IP version 6 address listed. And if you click the local host, right, for like myself right now, I'm on the internet and I'm connecting, it would tell you how many packets were sent and received. It would say like, you know, 1,495 or etc. So the way it's designed is it's gonna chunk stuff, you know, so we can set it where we would chunk it to 1,500, you know, kilobyte data that will be stored. Like what the book was talking about is that the way the author set it up is he would have it incrementing, it would store every, you know, so it would save all of that up to 1,500 kilobyte, and then on the and then it's gonna sniff again, it's gonna monitor again, and then save up to the next round. It will be another 1,500 kilobytes. So it would have like these tabs, and the traffic tab allows you to look at the protocol, and in general, you would see either TCP or UDP. Okay. And because if we're using web-based apps, which is very common in a network environment, it will tell you the type of known network traffic, which are the servers and the domains that it sees, and then there would be some unknown. And the unknown is important for us in that it would give us the details about security and what we need. Yeah, so if I have my firewall on and I also have Avira security settings on. Um, but you can try turning it off, Michelle. But the first time you log in, you would then log in as admin, and then you change the password. And sometimes it does time out, so it's not 100% stable. I'm just gonna let you know. So, okay. Now, if you look at the plugins area, you're going to see a lot of different plugins that will be used, and it tells you the location of the plugins. So with the program itself, I'm on Windows now, right? So for my C, so the nTopng application is here, okay? And what, you know, if you're looking at some of the documentations, the installer, and then the scripts are located here, okay? So what they did was they switched a big chunk of it over to Lua. So when you work with plugins, because in the older version, maybe a couple version ago, there's a Python option at the top where you can embed Python in, right? And I think they had disabled that. And so if you're looking at, so the interface, the API portion of it, they use REST and Lua, okay? So if you read the documentation a little closer, you would find that they incorporated, so with Python, embedded Python, you can actually have things that work directly with it, like what the textbook is describing, and that we can write the script, or we can automate, we can take our file and then we can dump it over to, nTop PNG, and we can use it to monitor, our switches, our routers, etc. But they had changed some of the things. So I think I just have to modify this file to reset my password. Okay. There's some instruction with that, right? Okay. So now if you look at their documentation to make it easy, right? Or you can watch a video, of course, but if you click the web interface, the web GUI, it tells you, right? So I use the local host, and you can also use your IP. And then the first time you would log in with the default, and it tells you it's admin. Then after that, you need to change. So when I talk about the little computer, the green computer, this is going to be your host, right? And it would show like the flows, how many flows you would have. So flows are connections, like the connection where you would receive and send packets, and then how many devices and so on. So the interface, you have to select an active interface. How can I tell it's active or not? If you select an inactive interface, it would tell you, it would be flatline for one, and then it would tell you that this interface has not received anything, because it's going to query that interface every 10 seconds. It's going to count down like 9, 8, 7, and it's going to look to see if it receives or sent anything. Okay. So you have to select an active interface in order to work. So if you run virtual machine, you would see like your VM interface on there, or if you have VirtualBox, your Oracle interfaces on there. And that's what virtual machine use to connect to your physical. It's a virtual network interface that connects to your physical network interface to establish the network for your virtual system. Now, in a regular environment, let's say we don't run virtual machines, then we would, on our server, we would select the interface that's using. And most servers would have multiple interface, right? And they often use Ethernet interface because most of our LAN stuff is Ethernet. So you would then select the interface that you want to use for monitoring, because so in a server box, you can have 3 or 4 interface, and common that you would have 2, okay? Like even for the web server, you would use one for in and one for out. So in that case, what you want to do is you want to specify which interface you want to use to monitor your local devices or your network in general. Now, here it gives you, all of the general information on how to navigate through it. And again, I was at its documentation, and then I simply select the graphical user interface. Okay. So the web GUI. And then if you wanted to work with SSH encryption, some of that, you can select that. And here it talks about flows. So your flow would look like this. If you click flow on the left, okay, it would tell you the type of protocol that you're working with. So in the screenshot, you see that they use ping, right? And there would be some UDP activity, of course. Okay, and then if we have systems that are actively connecting, you would see, the level, and then so here that shows you the level in the infrastructure, and then the IP addresses. And in this screenshot, they show version 4 IP, but now we see more version 6. So you would see hexadecimal instead of, the octet. Okay. So you can also look at like the protocol, different options with the client server breakdown. So this is the older way. So when it gives you the talkers, so the top flow talkers are the systems that receives and send the most, right? The most talkative system, that's what they call it. And it looks a little bit different on yours, right? But if you have quite a few top talkers, it's going to show you, how they intertwine. And then when you click your host, which is your computer, green, right, it shows you the type of hosts and the ports that they use. So why do we care about the inventory, the ports, and the top talker ports, right? This tool is very useful to detect denial of service attack in a network environment, because it graphs out where is your busiest area in the network. It shows you the type of ports that you're using across your client and server. It shows you which systems send and receive the most. So for denial of service, you're going to get flooded with traffic, right? And that's where you can see. And then even on the applications, if we're pushing a lot of web applications in our environment, you can also see how those applications are tied to socket ports and their host. Okay, so see? So a lot of the applications are using TLS. Now we don't use SSL as much anymore, but it would map it for you. So it gives you the overall view on, which is which. Okay. So you can monitor stuff live and be able to see and understand a little bit more on the trend and the pattern of your network. There's a report feature. And I think this tool is way better than Wireshark because Wireshark gives you a lot of data, but this one actually gives us a lot of analysis. Isn't it a security risk if you were able to log in for us and see your private IP address? Perhaps, but then my IP is renewed, right? And I can change it, so I can flush it and then renew it. Yeah, in the past, I was a little bit concerned about IP being shown on YouTube videos, and then, because my YouTube videos are publicly open, so anyone can watch it, right? So I was a little bit concerned about putting it out there, but how can you illustrate some of this? I wish that I could log in, but I want you to really look at some of the feature on this because this is a good tool. It's free. And then it's always marketing the commercial tool, right? The pro version upgrade now. Um, there will be more bells and whistles. Okay. So yes, that is some of my concern, but I could flush my IP. And internally, we, from the version 4, we would use, IPv6 and so on. Okay. So very much like all the other tools that you see in the market, you would have a reporting feature where you can filter. So what's the point of monitoring without giving the overall report, right? And you have to analyze the report. So you would select the network interface that you are using by just changing the toggle, and then you would specify the type of application that you want to look at. So if you wanted to look at ping, in the case of, you're concerned if they're doing replay attack or, Smurf, right, you would turn that on. Then if you're looking at, other areas like web, you can turn that on. DNS, you can turn that on, and then you click submit filter. Then it's going to give you a graph, okay, a snapshot of it. And what we can do is we can scan it for a while, right? Take that snapshot and we can evaluate it. So most administrators, they would do this when the network is very busy, okay? Like, doing operation, they would see it, take a look at it, and then they would look at, the type of protocols, the ports, how healthy is their network, how available is their network, and so on. And you would also come back to it and revisit it, especially when you have an increase in users. Okay, so let's say that all your stuff is web-based, right? You are a web service company. You want to check out your web server and your database server, okay? And the type of activity that those servers receive and the network that support those servers. Because if you are live web all the time, you wanted to make sure that number one, it's available mostly 99.999%, right? Based on security requirement. Number two, you wanted to make sure that we would close out some of the issues with the web security. So we would want to look at the traffic and be able to do that. I was hoping that this new version would allow us to do a little bit more with the scripting part of it, but instead, so what I'll do is I'll look into how different it is with Lua, and then maybe I can post something or share with you in the next session to incorporate it with Lua script instead of Python script, which is similar, but and Lua works well with browsers, so that's why they use it. So any question? So I want you to do is take a look at some of the areas and then put down the answer. Okay, but again, make sure we select an active interface, and that's important. Otherwise, you would see nothing. And then, you can check out your hosts and your networks area to see. And it would see, because you have it as a loopback, it would see the local system as a server, unless you have servers running in your network environment. Okay. And then look into additional features, log off the application and close your browser. And then you can submit your answer and screen capture on Canvas. Okay. So since the textbook talks about nTop PNG, but if you look at nTop, they have, I didn't have enough time, but I was trying to use the probe, because probe is more security oriented. So, oh, my traffic is so slow right now. Okay. So as you see, we have other, so I was trying to play with this right here. So when you look at download, it gives you two options. It gives you the nTop PNG and the probe. Those come free. Okay, and then they have other things that they release as well. Products would not be free. So when you look at some of the other ones, so nTop PNG, this is what you have. And then the Pro version would have more features and options. But if you look at some of their other areas, they actually have like deep packet inspection and also scrub, where it would filter out your denial of service attacks and so on. Okay, and if you wanted to look at packets, there are other tools for packet evaluation. So for you guys, I think these type of tools are very useful in the field, and to be able to add script to it and make it work in and customize it for your environment. That's definitely a great tool. Okay. And then you can look at API and how to incorporate, if you desire to write Python script to work with certain API, look at how they design the API. So their documentation talks about that. Okay. And this works well with, like I said, with SQLite. So you can create script to make it work with your database and then your SQL database. Okay. Any question? I will figure out why my password doesn't work. It probably just maybe something I reset last time. Okay. I think that's it for my session for today. If you don't have any questions, I'll let you take the rest of the afternoon off. Please type in your name. I'll stick around for questions in case you have questions. A lot of these open source tools are not in the Microsoft Store. Is that because, yes, because in order to release it on any app marketplace, you have to, you know, fulfill their test requirement and pay. Apple is the same way. So I think Apple, you pay like a couple $100 a year as a developer, and then for Microsoft, you have to pay a fee, a membership fee as well. So it's Google. Otherwise, it's not qualify as an approved app. So good point. All right, have a good afternoon. If you don't have any questions, I'll see you next week. Actually, no, next week is spring break. I'll see you the following week. Have a good one. Bye, everyone. Bye, Flame. Thank you, Michelle. You too.
Dr. Wen, sorry I was late today. I had to take my
Okay.
mom to the hospital just to get some x-rays.
Is she okay?
Yeah, it's just a checkup.
Okay.